Hi, this is Mickey Gray. This Christmas, ROKER Report are raising funds for Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's a fantastic charity and they'll be working round the clock this Christmas to make sure hungry people in our city don't go without. They couldn't do without your help. You can be certain that your donation, no matter how large or small, will be put to good use to provide help for local people who are in desperate need of it. You can find the links on ROKER Report's Twitter and Facebook page. Thank you for all your help, and I hope you all have a great and Merry Christmas.
Hello and welcome to another special edition of the ROKER Report podcast. I'm Richard Speight and I'm joined down the line from Brighton by the hero of Sunderland's 1992 FA Cup run, John Byrne. How are you, John?
I'm great, yeah. Given the circumstances at the moment, yeah, we're doing all right. As I say, difficult times for everybody at the moment. But yeah, overall, we're doing okay.
Oh, brilliant. So over the last few days, John, I've been immersing myself in your year with us at Sunderland, going through old programmes, newspapers, books, YouTube clips and all that stuff. But before we get into that detail, I want to take you right back to the start, if that's okay. So you were born in Manchester in 1961. So was football basically your life when you were a kid?
Probably sort of started at the age of 7. I was born in 61, so if you work it out, in 68, Manchester United won the European Cup, and that's when the sort of awakening came. They'll never forget that night when they beat Benfica 4-1. I was only 7, and as I say, the next day at school there was great celebrations, and that was when the sort of fuse was lit, really, with my love of football. And I know Sunderland fans are lazy, but my love of Manchester United as well. So that was where it all began. And I started going to the matches at Old Trafford and seeing Besselaw and Charlton and the rest of that great side. And it became my life. I was obsessed with it, as any 7 or 8 year old, 9-year-old boy is these days.
It must have been a great inspiration, that team, like with Best and Law, like you said, and Charlton in it. I mean, no better team for an aspiring footballer to grow up watching, really.
No, not at all. And I think, I can sort of relate to Sunderland fans in a little way, because, the passion is, when I went to Sunderland, I've got to be honest with you, the passion for the football club was second to none. But it's a sort of similar thing in Manchester. It's a northern, working class city, and I'll never forget the first time, and I'm sure a lot of Sunderland fans can relate to it. The first time you ever walk up those steps at the stadium and you see grass and the colour you've never seen before in your life, and the smells, the swearing, everything about it. It was fascinating. And as I say, I can sort of relate that to Sunderland in a way, that passion.
I can relate to all of that, and particularly around the time that you were playing for the club, that was when I was really getting into it and really inspired and having a some glory moments to latch onto as a kid can be all important, can't it? I've got an interview here that you did with Rob Mason, who was Sunderland club historian, in the Matchday programme from 1992, where you said that your biggest influence on your early career was a guy called Mike Walker, who's not the former Norwich City manager, but you said a taxi driver who scouted you for York City. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Was it he who got you over to York City then?
Yeah, he did. I mean, I'm blessed to Mike. Unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's a shame.
But he sort of saw me playing when I was about 14. It was funny because I played for Manchester boys, schoolboys, played for the school and stuff like that. But Mike sort of was taxi driving one day in Wythenshawe, which is a big estate where I was brought up on, and we were just playing on the school fields, and he stopped and started watching. And then every day we used to see this car pull up again, watching us. You know what cheeky kids are like. Everyone's saying, "Look at that over there." He's got obviously a bit of an oddball, watching all these kids playing football. And then after about 2 weeks, I came out through the railings, at the side of the pitch, where someone had made an hole, and it was a school. And this guy got out of the car and he sort of, we always joke that he said, do you want a trial for York City? And
What kid could resist a trial at York City?
he said, "Do you want a trial for York City?" And then we laughed after, saying, they usually say, "Do you want to come and see some puppies?" But but anyway, listen, joking apart, and probably not very PC, but he turned out to be genuine. He was a friend of Wilf McGuinness's, who was the manager of York City at the time. And I don't know if you remember Wilf McGuinness from Manchester United. He came into the side just after the Busby Babes, but he had to finish his career at United. And he became the manager when Matt Busby left. Unfortunately, his tenure at United wasn't very successful. He couldn't cope with the big players like Best and that. So he ended up going to Greece, and he ended up at York City, and that's how I ended up going over there for a trial.
Yeah, I've recently been hearing about Wilf McGuinness, been listening to a history of football. We're all getting through all the podcasts I've been meaning to listen to at the minute. That interview you did with Rob Mason was really interesting, actually, to dig it out amongst my programme collection. There's some absolute gems in there, to be honest. It's from the Tranmere game in August 92. In there, you say that your first record was Those Were the Days by Mary Hopkin.
It was. I can remember it now. Yeah, I can remember now. I can see. I used to love Mary Hopkins. No one will remember apart from people of my age.
Well, I was listening to it the other day. It brought back some memories of listening to it as a kid. I'm sure my mum and dad used to play it to me, so it probably does go down the generations. And also that you kept a programme collection. Have you still got all that stuff from your career?
Yeah, I've got programmes from, all the way through. They're all up in the attic. I used to have so many Manchester United programmes. I've still got someone passed one down to me. It's the first game after the Munich air disaster. And it's against Sheffield Wednesday. And unfortunately, all the United team is there are no players in the whether you put the two teams. You had to fill them out in pencil, and whoever went to the match filled them out. So I've got that somewhere in the attic. Yeah, that's very it's always a very sad and poignant thing to look at, really. Yeah, I
bet. You started your career at York City then as a junior, and you had 5 years there where you scored 55 goals. So a reasonably successful time you had then. 2 years under Denis Smith, when you won the Division 4 title. So did you enjoy your time at York?
It was up and down. I mean, I went there as a 16-year-old lad, as an apprentice. So I remember leaving home on the day I went, and there was none of this in those days, your parents driving you. We didn't have a car. So I remember I just got the bus into Manchester, got the train from Victoria, went to Bootham Crescent. The lads were all out training, so there was no kit for me to put on. So I put my United kit on, and as I walked out the tunnel, they were all training over the other side of the pitch. So I just walked straight across the pitch, and the first thing you realise is that you don't walk on the pitch at football stadiums, because the groundsmen are usually nutters. And the first thing they heard was, "Get off that effing pitch." It was a pitchfork flying towards me, and it was the groundsman Brian Foster, who turned out to be a right character. And I learned very quickly to stay away from the pitch unless you were playing a game on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday night.
Your career did take off, though. I mean, you were amongst the goals, and obviously you got that promotion.
We did, but it was Denis who turned my career around. I mean, it was sort of going nowhere at York. I was a young lad who was in and out of the side. And then Denis and Viv came. I was sort of in the reserves, and Denis was asking, "Who's that lad who's not playing this? Why is he not, with the first team? Why is he not, in the squad every week?" And he just came in, Denis and Viv, and they worked on me, and they just gave me the confidence to go on and believe in myself, where other managers they'd had at those days, there was, York weren't doing particularly well at the time. So they were always more in terms of not developing players. They were just trying to grind out results, with seasoned ex-pros. So there wasn't much of a youth development process going on. But I've got to be honest with you, Denis and Viv at the time, but as I say, they changed the course of my career. And our path was to meet a few times after I left York.
Absolutely. And they did have that ability to bring through young players. I mean, we've been going over the 89-90 season, and, you look at the age of some of the players that Smith had playing in that side, and, they're racking up 300 appearances by the time they were 22, 23. Unbelievable, really, and not something you see these days.
No, yeah. I mean, Denis was, and I say Viv as well. Malcolm Crosby. They were prepared to give youth a chance, and I can't thank them enough for what they did for me.
Well, you got a move to the First Division. You moved to London with QPR for, I think it was £100,000 or something in 1984, which was a big move for you, jumping up the leagues from the lower leagues up to the top flight. How did you cope with that?
It was hard at first. I'd always been brought up in the north. We'd done well at York. The season we got promoted, we were the first team to get over 100 points with Denis in charge. We got promoted the next season, started well again. There were teams looking at us. I know there was a lot of teams in the north looking, but we played QPR in the Milk Cup, and as I say, I had 2 good games against them. And a couple of weeks after we'd played, they put in an offer for me, and the offer was to London. But it was funny at the time because, there was no agents in those days, Rich. And basically, I just got a phone call one Thursday afternoon from Dennis Smith, and he said, "We've sold you, and you're on the 5 o'clock train to London. Alan Muller is going to meet you at King's Cross." And that's it. We've agreed a fee, and that was it. I got a bag, got the train on my own again. It's sort of, there was no support or anything at the time in those days. Mullery met me at the station and took me to a posh hotel, the Royal Lancaster in Bayswater, and offered me a deal. I was ringing my mate Mike Walker up in Manchester. He was the only advice I was getting. And it's a very, very far distant thing from the players today who have agents who are doing all this work for them. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I signed probably the worst contracts anyone's ever signed in the history of contracts. Because Mullery's sort of end talk to me was, they said, "Who are York playing on Saturday?" And I said, "Well, I think we're away at Crewe." He said, "Well, we're at home to Manchester City." He said, "Where do you want to be?" And with that, it was like, I just said, "Where's the pen?"
Easy choice, really, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but money-wise, it was disastrous. I probably only signed for about another £30-40 a week more than I was on at York, and moved down to London where it was massively expensive. And that's where, in this day and age, and as the agents develop, players were never, I'm not saying ripped off, but it wasn't great from Queen's Park Rangers to offer me that deal. They should have looked after me better, to be honest with you. Moving down to London on your own with not much more money than you were already on. It was it was a bit of a disaster for about a year financially for me. I found it very difficult.
Did they sort your contract out after then?
They did, because I started doing well and I got in the Republic of Ireland squad, and Jim Smith came in a few years later, and he realised, and I went to see him and said, "Jim, I'm struggling, I'm not doing very well financially, but, we're playing Manchester United and scoring goals and playing for Ireland." And he looked at it and he found out how much it was on. He said, "We'll have to sort this out for you." And he did, to be fair to him. But as I say, it's a great lesson in how life was in football before agents, young lads going down to London to speak to big clubs and that, and as I say, signing for next to nothing. But as I say, I was following my dreams, and as I say, I wanted to be playing and testing myself against the best players. So money didn't really come into it a great deal, but as long as you had enough to do all right,
Yeah, absolutely. And so you had a couple of mid-table seasons with QPR, and then you finished 5th, I think it was, in 87, 88. I have seen your mazy run in that 6-0 against Chelsea in 1986. I watched that on the highlights. And you must have came up against some of the great names of that 1980s era. Who stands out for you amongst, the other First Division footballers at that time?
Well, probably, you look back at Liverpool and that, Barnes, Lawrenson, Hansen, Arsenal, some of the big names, Tony Adams, Martin Keown, Everton, who won the league that year, Derek Mountfield, and there's Kevin Ratcliffe at the back. There was some great, Gary Lineker, obviously, there were some great footballers around at that time. And it was, I'm so privileged to have played in that era. It was awesome at times. I remember playing against Sunderland a few times as well. I think I scored against Sunderland for QPR once at Loftus Road, and I think in those days you would have had players like Barry Venison and Nick Pickering playing. around that time, and probably Gary Bennett, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Then it was off to France after QPR, wasn't it, to join Le Havre?
Yeah.
How did that transfer come about?
Well, it was a bit similar to the Yorks. This scenario, we played Le Havre in a mid-season friendly. We played them at Loftus Road, and we went over there and played them out there. I think one of the games was Gary Waddott's testimonial. But towards the end of the season, I sort of, my form wasn't great, and I was probably not in the side. I was in and out of the side. And Jim Smith pulled me in, and he says to me, John, we've had an offer from Le Havre. He said, do you want to go there? And I've got to be honest with you, my first thoughts, Rich, were no, I don't really fancy it, because the stadium wasn't particularly great. They just got relegated, so they were trying to sign players to get them back up to the first division. But Smithy, good old Jim, rest in peace, he said to me, listen, you don't have to sign for him. He said, just go over for the day with your wife, and you can get some duty free. He said, and just have a day out. So that's the way Jim was. So I went out there, had a day, looked at, they'd had a new stand built at the stadium. And I thought, actually, this is actually quite all right. And I think Graham Ricks had just signed for Caen, which wasn't too far away. And I knew Ricks here a little bit. And I thought, well, why not? Why not give this a go? The contract they were offering was all right, something different, a different type of football, different language, different culture. So I decided, I was going to give it a go. And I'm really glad I did, because it was a good experience, and I met some really good people out there and had some good experiences, and as I say, in a different style of football.
So what was the football like? Obviously, it was the second tier in France, your season there, and you had Frank Stapleton come there as well. So,
yeah, Frank came over. Yeah, I broke my leg after about 3 weeks there in a game, and so that was difficult for a few weeks. But I think Frank was in between clubs, and I mentioned to the chairman that Frank was looking for a club, and he came over and signed for us as a bit of a replacement for me. But once I got fit again, Frank was in the side, and we had a good season. We got to the playoffs, and unfortunately got beat in the playoff semi-final, which was disappointing for the club and disappointing for me personally, because obviously, they bought us to try and get them straight back up. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be.
But you enjoyed your life out there. I mean, I'm guessing the lifestyle was pretty nice.
It was only in Normandy. I mean, it's, to be honest with you, it's the same weather. It's directly opposite Brighton as a crow flies, and it's only 80 mile away. So it wasn't like moving to Marseille or Nice, something like that. The weather was the same. But the culture was very different, and as I say, different type of football. It was a lot slower build up. It was how football sort of has been here about 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of possession, and if you were playing up front, you'd end up doing a lot of work but not getting too many touches of the ball, because it wasn't as direct as English football. But all the same, as I say, I'm glad I had the experience. I can speak a little bit of French now. It's not perfect by any means, and I've still got friends who I keep in touch with from that era.
But then in 1990, it was back across the channel, as you said, or directly north to Brighton and Hove Albion, and it's where you now call home. And it's a city I know pretty well, and I've had some good times down there myself. So what was it that took you back across the channel up to Brighton? Well,
the story includes Sunderland, because towards my second season at Le Havre, Denis came in for me. He contacted me, and he said he wanted me to come to Sunderland, because he said he wanted Eric Gatesy was sort of coming towards the end of his career, and he wanted me to replace Eric, and he wanted me to play up front with Marco, which really sort of, as I say, was something I really, really fancied, to be honest with you. So I went away in early 1990 with Ireland to the World Cup, Italia 90. And I thought the deal was going to be done, but unfortunately it fell through. And this is where agents started coming in, because I got an agent involved then. Times have moved on. I had an agent, and unfortunately, him and Sunderland, in terms of agreeing fees, they fell out, and I ended up having to go back to Le Havre. And the downside of that is Le Havre had signed another foreign player. You could only have 3 foreign players to replace me, and I was surplus to requirements. So when I went back, I wasn't allowed to train with the first team anymore. I had to go and train with the youth team. And And I was sort of cast aside, basically. Just come back from the World Cup on a high. And as I say, I had to do all my pre-season training with the youth team and the laugh. And there was no way back, because once they signed their 3 players, they were committed to them. They couldn't have the 4th one in there, even if one of the other ones was injured or anything. So I was totally frozen out and in the cold. So what I did, I wrote to every club in the first division and the second division. And to be honest with you, I only got a reply from Brighton and Hove Albion, who showed some great interest for me coming over.
But obviously it worked for you, because you were there 3 times during your career, was that right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, that first season I signed. It was a funny old club, Brighton, because they had a manager called Barry Lloyd, who's probably not particularly well known, but they had a lot of old seasoned pros. I used to always liken it to the film The Dirty Dozen. They just signed all these old pros who'd been around, in the top division, like Gary Chivers from Chelsea, Colin Pates from Chelsea, Mark Barham from Norwich. There was a whole load of us, and we had a great season, and we ended up getting to the playoff finals, as I say, as a big surprise to I think even to the Brighton fans and to the Brighton managerial team. I didn't think we'd get that far, and we got beat by Notts County 3-1 in the final. But I think that would have been the next season, would have been the first season of the playoffs, the Premiership, sorry.
Oh yeah, it would have been, wouldn't it? Yeah. So during your time with QPR, you said you got that international call up with the Republic of Ireland. How was it that you qualified to play for Ireland?
My dad's from Ireland, and he died before I played for Ireland, which was really unfortunate, because he would have been very proud,
I'm sure,
to see us pull on a green jersey. But yeah, no, I was playing for QPR. I got in the side, I was scoring a few goals. And the manager at the time was a lad called Owen Hand. Obviously, the name Byrne, it rings bells for the people who are selecting the team. So he came to see us and asked us if I, wanted to be in the squad. So I said, of course. Thinking of my dad and thinking that with some of the players I've played with for Ireland, I sometimes have to pinch myself and say, blimey, because I played with some real world-class footballers. I was very lucky.
Absolutely. So you went to the Euros and to World Cup 1990, Italia 90, and both times the squad faced England. I know those games were really important for the status of football in Ireland, weren't they?
Oh, massively. I mean, that was the first time they qualified for a major tournament, Euro 88. And as I say, the whole country went mad. It was unbelievable. I've never, again, known anything like it. The country stopped for all the games. And as I say, the Euro 88, they played England in Stuttgart. And you looked at that England side, there was like Hoddle and Waddle, Shilton, amazing side. And Ireland ended, I didn't get on, I was on the bench. But Ireland ended up winning that game 1-0 with a Ray Houghton header. I mean, they really enjoyed those victories, really enjoyed it. It was great for the nation and for everybody. Amazing times, and as I say, they always had the sort of hoodoo over England, Ireland. They just could never sort of beat Ireland in any of these sort of tournament games. It was bizarre, really.
So what was the highlight for you of Italia 90? Obviously a brilliant tournament for Ireland, going all the way at the quarterfinals against Italy in Rome. Was that although it wasn't successful for Ireland, was that the highlight, or was it knocking out Netherlands or drawing against England? What stands out for you?
I think the whole thing. I think just being part of something like that, it's sort of like a dream, really. From leaving 6 weeks earlier, to go and do the acclimatisation in Malta, the suits, training in wonderful stadiums, and then all of a sudden being part of something that you've watched as a child or, through the years, and seeing world-class players like Ruud Gullit, close up and on the same sort of, you're in the same environment as them. I think it's the whole thing. I mean, if you were going to pick one moment in that tournament for Ireland, it would probably be Dave O'Leary's penalty and Paki Bonner's save in the game before the Italy game against Romania, where it had gone to extra time and it went to penalties. And I think Dave, Packy made the save, and then Dave had to score. And I think if you ever see footage of that, you can see my blonde mullet bouncing along like I think it's probably the quickest move to jump on Dave O'Leary. As I say, you did just the whole thing. Being part of something like that as a kid from Manchester is just a dream.
I've been rewatching the old FIFA World Cup movies that are, I think, but absolutely glorious, and that game features really heavily in it. Looking back, it must have been fantastic, and that was my awakening as a fan. Really, 1990 World Cup. Remember almost every minute of it. But a year or so later, you find yourself eventually joining back up with Dennis Smith and coming up to join us at Sunderland.
At last.
At last, it was a snip at £225,000. And you'd already scored 7 goals for Brighton before joining us in October, including scoring against us just not long before you joined us. Was that part of it? Was that another one of those where you were kind of collared after the game and Dennis persuaded you to come up?
Well, I think Brighton was struggling financially. They were about to lose their ground, the Goldson ground. So they were in a position where they had to sell. They sold my strike partner, Mike Small, to West Ham. And they were just trying to offload players and trying to get money in so that they could stay at the Goldson. Eventually they left, and we know the story now, they're at the Amex. But no, I played the game at ROKER. I'll never forget that game at ROKER Park. We got beat 4-2. Sunderland were excellent that day. But I had a decent game, when you play well. I scored a good goal, and, Denis, after, I knew he still wanted me to come through the grapevine. And I say I hadn't played at ROKER Park for years and years. I think it had been when I was last at Queen's Park Rangers, and that day it just sort of spurred me on. I thought, if I can come and play here in this stadium week in, week out, that'd be, I'm getting on a little bit now, that would be a lovely way to sort of finish off. And little did I know, that was sort of going to happen, but not on the scale to the sort of relevant success that we had at the time.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was anticipating what happened later on in the season. But you scored your first couple of goals in a 3-1 win at home against Watford. What you've talked about ROKER Park as an opposing player. What were your first impressions of being, having that support behind you, having us all roaring you on?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I think the first game was against Bristol Rovers, and we didn't win, and I didn't score. We had a good game, and the atmosphere, it was just different class. And as I say, when I scored my first couple of goals in that game against Watford, I think one was David James was in goal, I think, and there was one right in front of the Fulwell end, and it was just a great feeling. I just thought, I'm going to like it here. I'm going to really enjoy it, and as I said, I did.
Is it true that you lived in the same hotel as Don Goodman and Anton Rogan in Durham when you first signed?
That's true, yeah, that's dangerous, to be honest with you. Yeah, when you sign for a club, they always put you up in a hotel, so it's happened to me a few times in your career, and more or less, somebody else has signed at the same time, so you're all in the same environment. And as I say, Don and Rogie, still speak to them now like great lads, and that, at times it could be quite a dangerous sort of situation to be in. You have to be ultra professional to, especially through the week, to steer clear of the clubs and bars, so to speak. Football was a different game in those days, Rich. It's not how it is now. It's a lot more social, and the lads were they'd go out and have a few pints and stuff like that, and they were happy to sit and mingle with the fans. It was a great times, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, it was interesting times in that hotel with Rogie and Don. I've got to be honest with you.
You were sent off in Don's first game for Sunderland, weren't you, in the December? It's probably not the start you were looking for that partnership. I think did you and Gordon Armstrong get sent off in the same game really early on?
It was against Wolves, wasn't it? I think. Yeah, you just reminded me of that now. Yeah, it was at Molineux, and I got sent off after 7 minutes. And it was a bizarre thing, because we started off the game really well, and I thought, it's going to be a good afternoon. I I think I played a ball off off their defender, and it came off in it. It should have gone for a corner, and I didn't say too much to the linesman, but he came over and said that I'd sort of said some foul and abusive language to him, which I hadn't directed at him. I might have swore, saying, but yeah, next minute I'd been sent off. Denis wasn't very happy, and I think Gordon's get sent off in that game as well.
Yeah, like a minute later.
Oh, blimey. So I think no wonder. I think Denis wasn't very happy when he came off. But yeah, no, that was bizarre. He'd never got sent off these days for something like that. It was ridiculous.
So you had partnerships up front with, I guess, 3 different players during that season, with Don, obviously, in the league, and then with Kieran Brady and Peter Davenport in the Cup. And they're all 3 very different players. So what combination did you enjoy most?
All of them, to be honest with you. As I say, they're all great players, weren't they? In their own rights, to be honest with you. Don, what he's like, he's strong, he's quick, he's brave. Dav, slightly different, good at holding the ball up, but, good in front of goal. And Kieran, what an enigma. The amount of, well, you've heard this before, the amount of ability Kieran had. It's a shame he didn't go on to do greater things in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I remember just marvelling at him as a kid.
Oh.
And I think my dad still says he's the best player he's ever seen play for Sunderland in terms of technical ability.
Oh, unbelievable.
Right up there with, the greats.
Yeah, we used to marvel at him in training. The things he could do with the ball was incredible. And as I say, it's a shame that he just didn't go on, just didn't fulfil that potential that he had.
Denis didn't last that long after your arrival. I think you previously said in a previous interview that you might have had a way of getting rid of managers after you arrive at clubs. But were you sad to see him go? Yeah, very much so. Yeah, of course. As I say, he's always, he's always, you have managers who like you, and he was one that he always liked me and always got the best out of me. And it's always, as I say, sad to see managers get the sack. I mean, Alan Muller, he didn't last long at QPR once I'd got there as well. He got the sack a few weeks after I'd joined. But yeah, no, it was sad. But you have to move on. As I say, can't remember the circumstances, but I don't think results were going particularly well at the time, were they? And it was sad, but it was a catalyst, for things to happen, wasn't it? With Crosser taking charge and, to say, the cup run sort of propelling us. I think it was Denis's last game, the away game at Oxford United. Was that just on Boxing Day? Was it possibly? I think it was. Yeah, and we were awful that day. We were terrible. I don't know. With the talent that was in that team, the league form wasn't great, and you could never put your finger on why the league form wasn't great with the ability of the players you had, and then the cup run, was phenomenal. It's bizarre. Football's just bizarre sometimes. You can't explain why. No, totally. I mean, we'd come down from the first division that season, so I think we were pretty well fancied, and I do remember it being a disappointing start to the season, but then it couldn't have been a more exciting end to the season. We started the FA Cup run with a 3-0 home victory against Port Vale. And I think you scrambled one across the line on 73 minutes in that. And then it was away to Oxford in the 4th round, and you got a tap in early on. Yeah, tap in. And we gone back to Oxford because we were awful on that game, on Boxing Day. And we came back in that cup game. It was a night match. And we played ever so well. We were great. I mean, Oxford couldn't live with us. The scoreline flattered them a little bit because I think they got a couple of late goals towards the end. But, we were starting to show, what we were capable of. And we still never thought at that time, you could, you would go as far as you could in the FA, as we went in the FA Cup at all. Well, yeah, and so the next round was against West Ham, and it went to a replay. In the original game at Roker Park, again, you scored in that. I think the keeper saved a header, and then you poked it home. But it's not remembered as the most attractive game of football.
Yeah, it was very windy that day, Rich. It was a really windy, blowy day. Typical, ROKER Park days, to be honest with you. And yeah, it wasn't a great game. I managed to scramble over. It was a really scruffy goal. And it was interesting that day, though. My strike partner at Brighton, who they'd sold, Mike Small, he scored for West Ham at the other end. So,
but then you got to the replay at Upton Park, 2 goals against a team struggling in the first division, but still full of big names. And it must go down as one of the best cup ties of the era, or of any era. I mean, I rewatched it in the last few days. It was a really exciting game. And your first came early on 6 minutes. Loose ball from their centre-back. Was it Ray Atterveld? And you were through on goal. What went through your mind at that point?
I think it was about pass back once. Well, yeah, I remember anticipating, as a strike, you always try and anticipate what might happen. And I thought, he's going to pass this back here. And he did. And he put me in. So, yeah, gleefully put it away. But you're right about the game. It was end-to-end stuff. I remember Tony Norman making a save. I don't know if you remember that, Rich.
Brilliant.
It was. I think it was Martin Allen, who I played with at QPR. I think it was a free kick, and he put it in. It was going right at the top corner, and from nowhere, Tony just came out with his left hand. I think it was. It came over and just tipped it round the corner. It was incredible. As I say, we went there, and you think you've had your chance at ROKER Park. We didn't take it. The chances of us going down to Upton Park, were probably up against us. And as I say, it was a great cup side. I think Rushy finished it off, didn't he? Towards the end.
You headed it on to him.
Yeah, I flicked it on. Rushy ended up on the end of it, and he's walloped it in with his left foot. But it was just brilliant, and it was starting to gain momentum there. And the great thing about it, when and I don't know if any of the other lads have mentioned it, Owsley or anyone like that. After every game, we really, really enjoyed it and partied, and we thought, how long is this going to keep going on for? It was amazing times.
Yeah, absolutely. Your second goal in that was phenomenal as well. I mean, seriously, it was played a nice little ball into your feet from Peter Davenport, and then you skinned their defence.
Yeah, I think it was a little mazy run, wasn't it? I think I went one way and then took him in the other way, and I just managed to steer it into the bottom, the keeper's bottom right hand corner. But great memory. I know, as I say, Upton Park was always one of those grounds where I was quite lucky. I used to always manage to score, even with my other clubs at Upton Park. You get grounds, where you always do quite well, and Upton Park was certainly one of them. And the next game, I think the Stamford Bridge, I used to always manage to do all right at Stamford Bridge as well.
The first game at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea, you're up against, again, a team with some big name players, but Sunderland competed really well throughout, right up there with them. You couldn't separate them in terms of quality. Did the players know that they shouldn't have had a corner for their goal?
Oh no! Well, I don't know. That's the first time I've heard it sort of mentioned, so I didn't realise that.
I remember at the time it was a sore point, and when they got their goal, I think Kerry Dixon had a shot, and it didn't deflect off our defender. It just bobbled off the turf, and he kicked it over the bar, and they got a corner for it and scored. But then on the 82, you got the equaliser, lovely ball over from Paul Bracewell, and a header. I've heard that you weren't too keen on heading the ball, but a few of these goals are headers. Yeah,
well, I wasn't the best in the air, that's for sure. But I was all right. I wasn't too bad. But as I say, it was just meant to be, wasn't it? Brace put that ball through, and it was a funny game. As I say, the lads defended. They were solid that day, all the boys. I got a lot of accolades for scoring the goals, but you've got to remember some of the defending and some of the goalkeeping, during those times, and the lads in the midfield working hard. Were heroes just as much as I was, blimey, But yeah, that ball came over Brace, and it was sort of as a weird header, really, because it was difficult to get any sort of purchase on it, because it was sort of going away from me instead of coming back towards me, where you can get a really good sort of bit of power on it. But I just managed to get enough, and it sort of, as soon as it left my head, I knew the keeper was struggling. I think it was a Hitchcocking goal.
He couldn't get across to it.
He couldn't get across to it, and I thought this is actually this is going in. Lo and behold, it just sort of it didn't really go in with a great deal of power, did it? But it just managed to sneak into the bottom corner. It was, fantastic moment. I've got to be honest with you.
I think it was the fact that it was a looping ball from brace and it was bouncing and it bounced up, so the trajectory of the ball wasn't going to give you any power. You had to generate it all yourself from just looking back at it. But anyway, we got the replay. I was made up. It was a bit of kind of justice for not shouldn't have had the corner for the first goal. And that replay I picked out. I've literally got my programme with my 10-year-old handwriting on the back of it, with man of the match written against Tony Norman for keeping us in that game. But it does stand out for a lot of Sunderland fans as possibly their favourite game of all time. And I know that you said in the interview that you did with Mark Carrick for ROKER Report a couple of years ago about just the emotion that stirred by that game. So what's your abiding memory of that night under the floodlights?
It was electric that night. Playing against Chelsea, they've got a lot of stars in that team. Lads I knew, Andy Townsend from Ireland, Tony Cascarino, Denis Wise. But it was a Chelsea side, who on paper probably, you would have thought would have turned us over, but the lads were just phenomenal that night. And the atmosphere, I think, you always say about a spare man and an extra man. I know it's an old cliche, but the atmosphere in Roker Park that night was fantastic. It was unbelievable. It was the roar, everyone talks about the Roker roar and where have you, but I think that just spurred us on, didn't it? I think the fact that we got the first goal probably helps us as well. I think Dav got the first one. I think we made a good break and I managed to cut inside and the keeper's parried it and Dav's followed up and stuck it in. I think that really set the scene, didn't it? And for 75 minutes, I think we were outstanding. I say brilliant defending. The lads dug in at the back. Tony was making some great saves. But I'm not sure how long to go there was when Denis Wise...
4 minutes?
Was it 4 minutes? Was it? Yeah, 4 minutes. Denis Wise pops up, and I've got to be honest with you, Rich, I thought that was it then. I thought that's the end of the cup run.
I think we all did.
I think we did. I think as a player, you think, well, we've had our chance, I think we're running out of steam. I certainly was, tired, and I thought if this is going to go to extra time, I think Chelsea will probably go on and win this game, and, that's just the feeling you got, but... Then out of nowhere, we managed to get a corner. But I just remember Gordon, he rose like a salmon. And it went in. They didn't have anyone on the post, which was surprising enough. In those days, they didn't have anyone on that post. And as I say, Gordon just rose. And as that ball went in and he scored, the whole place just erupted, didn't it? It was just unbelievable. Absolutely amazing scenes, and nothing like I will experience in my career, or probably, I won't now, most definitely. Yeah, just unbelievable. It was just a question then. We've just got to hang on for the last minute or so.
Well, like you described, the game against Benfica as a Man United fan as a kid, I think for a lot of fans my age, that was kind of, the defining moment and the best feeling that you could ever have, beating a big team like Chelsea, getting through a massive game like the cup semi-final. It's iconic, I think, in the recent or reasonably recent history of the club. It still stands out and it's still very much talked about, and it sent you through to the semi-final. Now I've got the programme here for the semi-final, and there's a nice little piece in it with Paul Bracewell being asked about each member of the team, and he describes you, I don't know if you've ever seen this, he describes you as the oldest swinger in town. And that you're partial to a few highlights, although you claim that the hair colour was natural. He said it must be natural bleach. Was that just like normal banter that you'd have to put up with in the Sunderland dressing room at the time?
Yeah, of course it was. That's where the thing you sometimes miss most about football, just the banter from the lads in the dressing room, the day-to-day insults, which go on, and I'm sure they do. Doesn't matter what level of it. Anyone who's ever played football knows that goes on Sunday mornings down the park, right the way through to the top of the game. So yeah, he's a great lad, Brace. Yeah, he used to get a lot of stick as well. But he could take it. He was all right. Just one footnote, to that game, Rich. The Chelsea game. I'll never forget when the final whistle went. And all the fans ran on the pitch, and this guy came on and gave me a hug, but the brim of his baseball cap split my nose. He didn't mean it. He was just overjoyed, and so was I. But I'll never forget this beery hug from this guy, and his baseball cap just splitting the bridge of my nose. And when I went in the dressing room after the game, I've got blood coming down my face, and the lads were all going, "Has someone hit you?" One of the Chelsea players. I went, "No, it's."
Well, maybe that person's listening to this, and if they are, get in touch on the social media.
It was only a superficial wound, and we were just so overjoyed. It didn't matter, did it? It was brilliant.
Oh, it was amazing. Next day going into school was just like the best feeling in the world, I have to say. And it was like, were you there? Yeah, I was there. It was absolutely amazing. So we got to that semi, and again, as I think we all know by now, another goal from yourself. It was a 1-0 victory. A very tense game, as I remember it, sitting in the stand in Hillsborough as a 10-year-old. Is that how you remember it, as being just really, really on edge the whole game?
Yeah, it was. Again, Hillsborough generates a great atmosphere, doesn't it? When it's full, and especially the number of Sunderland fans that they were in that sort of cop end. It was a strange game. We felt good though. I've got to be honest with you. In the morning, you're a bit nervous before games, but when you get there, you get out on a warm up. Once you start playing, your first few touches, you think, I think this could be a good day, because the worrying thing was they were a very good side. They had some good players. The likes of Mark Bowen and Culverhouse and Sutton up front, Rule Fox. They had some quality players. Who could hurt you. And again, on paper, they probably fancied their chances on the day. Against our boys. But there was just something about it. You just felt after 5 or 10 minutes that this could possibly be our day. I think some games you go into as a player, some days you feel good and you feel energised. Some days, you feel tired, and this was one of those days where I think we've got a chance again. And it was nervy, it's edgy. We got a goal quite early on in the game, didn't we? And I remember, it seemed like an eternity for the clock to get to half time, and then for it to go around through the second half. Because, as I say, once again the boys defended magnificently. And Tony, again, in goal was awesome.
He saved in the last minute, didn't he? They kind of broke away off a free kick. They played it to the side. And I remember watching it back again, it brought it all back of just that moment where you think, oh, it's all gone. And he just clung on to it, didn't spill it out into the path of the on-Russian strikers. Yeah, it was, and it really was a collective team effort, that cup run, wasn't it? Obviously,
absolutely.
You were banging the goals in your goal in that game. I know I've read something where you said you thought you might be offside. I look back and I don't think you were. It was a square ball anyway. I think it was. You'd held up a long clearance, and then Rushy had brought it forward and played it through to Brian Atkinson and got the ball across to you. It was a nice header in the end. You got away from your man really well.
Well, it was one of those things when you taught early on, with Viv. I'll go back to Viv. Viv at York City used to say, "Pop the ball off and get in the box." And that's basically what it was all about. Get hold of it, pop it off. Rushy played a lovely ball in for Aki, and Aki's just, I've got to be honest with you. Anyone probably have scored that. It was probably the easiest header of my career, but as I say, probably the most important one. But as I say, it was a long spell after that, waiting for the end of that game. I thought it'd never come, but when it did, the scenes were incredible again. Absolutely wonderful.
An amazing feeling. I just remember being exhausted. I think I must have slept the whole journey back in the car from Sheffield up to Sunderland. It was a bit overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, well, I remember I went to see Manchester United in an FA Cup semi-final at Hillsborough against Derby County. And, after, coming off the pitch, I was trying to remember, Gordon Hill had scored 2 goals for United that day and took them to Wembley. And that was the year I think they got beat by Southampton in the final. But, to be there as a fan, I could feel it I've never thought I'd ever feel it as a player after being there as a fan. But so I empathise with all the fans, how they must be feeling as well, because it's such a joyous moment to win in a semi-final. To know that you're in the FA Cup final. It's just amazing.
So I'm guessing there was a bit of a party after that then.
Yeah, I could say that. To be honest with you, it was a bit of a party after every game on that cup run. Well, towards the end, it became a bit of a tradition sort of thing.
Was it Finos?
Oh, I think we ended up in there after the Chelsea game, most definitely. But the Hillsborough one, that I think that one went long into the night, but I think it was in someone's house, so it wasn't too bad.
Great. And you had a bit of a strange build-up. I heard he said that was the hotel a good way outside of London. You didn't have that much time when you got to Wembley.
It was in Marlow. Marlow's not too far out. It's only just up the A40. So it's only about a 40 minute drive, to Wembley. To be honest with you, I'd always prefer getting to a stadium, as short as possible of time before you go out on the pitch, because then you don't have to start thinking about it. So, but no, the hotel was good. It was all right. I think sometimes, my biggest thing sometimes with when you're in the FA Cups, and I remember it was QPR in the Milk Cup, you could argue you go away a bit too early, instead of keeping to your normal sort of rate. Does this make sense, Rich? You tend to hotel about 3 or 4 days before rather than maybe the day before, which you would do for a normal game. We did it with QPR. We got to the Milk Cup final and we were playing on the Sunday, and we were in the hotel on the Thursday night, and it was a long time hanging around waiting for the game to come up. It wasn't too bad with the FA Cup final. I think we went on the Thursday or the Friday. Was the game on the Saturday? I think it was I can't remember. It was a Saturday, wasn't it?
It will have been a Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we went on the Wednesday, maybe. You could argue possibly was it too long away, but it doesn't matter. It was still, you nitpicking sort of thing. Could we have done that? Could we have done that? At the end of the day, the outcome wasn't great, but it was a brilliant day out. And I don't know if Howsey told you, in the hotel we met Leslie Nielsen, from the Naked Gun.
He did. He said you'd just been watching it.
Yeah, we'd just been watching it, and there he was sat over in the corner. He came over and he said, "You're all under arrest," like this, and wasn't that funny? But we were all like, going mad, because it was Leslie Nielsen.
Absolutely brilliant. But I guess you were the centre of attention, like the media, because obviously there's a massive build-up with, TV coverage, and then was the biggest game of the season, the FA Cup final. Still should be, really, but I think it's been slightly diluted over the years. But you will have been centre of the media attention. Was that something like you were used to coping with, you were pretty happy with, or did it was it a bit difficult for you?
No, I just tried to take it in your stride. There was a lot of attention because obviously I scored in every round, and I would have joined a small group of players who I think have still only scored in every round of the FA Cup. I just tried to take it in my stride. I was one of the lads, and just try to be the same as everyone. As I say, I was being asked to do interviews right, left, and centre. But you just felt it was part of it. It was part of, being involved in an FA Cup final, what you dreamed about as a kid. Do you remember you were little and you used to get up in the morning on FA Cup final day and watch the coverage all the way through? And, from the cameras sitting on the team bus and seeing the team leave and interviewing them at the ground, it just all felt part of that. So I didn't really think it affected me as such. I just tried to take it in your stride, really, and try not. It was a team effort. It wasn't just all about me. I think that's the one thing I wanted to try and sort of get across to the media as well. My goals, they helped, but we wouldn't be there without saves and people getting tackles in and blocks and making passes. So it was a magnificent team effort.
So to the game itself, obviously you had a chance early on. We'll not dwell on that. It was the
13th minute, 20th second. It was. I've not thought about it today, Rich. So you've just
sorry.
It's in my thoughts today. It's difficult. I mean, when I think about it now and I've watched it, I try not to watch it, but it does go through my head, and it goes through my head more often than you would think. When Out played a short corner, I can't remember who was taking the corner. It might have been Aki, and he plays it back in, and then it goes to Bawley, who's headed it back across, and it's just dropped over the defender's head, and I snatched it instead of. If I want to make an excuse, maybe when it drops over the defender's head at the last minute, you haven't got much time to adjust. But I could probably have had a touch when I look at it again and then had a calm finish. But it wasn't to be, and as I say, it was disappointing. I always have a dream of it just hitting my foot and just flying past Grobbelaar. But the other thing that disappointed me as well, when I watched back the highlights, I made a run. I went on a run in the game. The miss was bad, but I went on a run in the game towards goal, and Anton had come up on the left-hand side of me, and he was in acres of space, and I didn't give it him. And I thought he had someone with him. And when I look back now, he was through on goal. I spoke to him last Sunday, and he was going here. He said, "If you'd have given me that ball, I'd have scored." And that disappoints me a little bit when I watch that back. I think, if I'd had more awareness about me on that day, I'd have just took that ball inside him and he'd have been through. He might have got a shot, he may have parried it. I don't know. So when I look back at the game, I had chances and I had opportunities possibly to put people in. But I've got to be honest with you, I didn't know Rogu was free on his own in that situation.
But I mean, you were up against a great Liverpool team back then, and they came out all guns blazing in the second half, didn't they? They obviously had a bit of a rocket up their backsides.
That's right.
At half time, and to be frank, you had one snatch chance, but they dominated that second half, didn't they? It must have been difficult to be out there on that pitch.
We couldn't lay a glove on them in the second half. First half, I thought we played ever so well, and I think we did ourselves proud. We just needed that. We just needed the goal, didn't we? We just needed a break in that first half. It might have made it a different second half, but the second half they were different class. Jan Molby ran the show, didn't he, in the middle of the park? We couldn't get near him, and they were, just moving that ball really, really quickly. And we as I say, we couldn't get near him in that second half, and it was disappointing the fact that we didn't sort of test them a little bit more towards the end of the game.
You did still end up with a winner's medal. I was reading in Gary Bennett's book, The Black Cat. It's a bit of a scrapbook he's put together. Really, really good read. I don't know if you've got it, but you ended up with a winner's medal. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that happened?
Well, we went up, obviously very disappointed. You go up the steps of Wembley, I can't remember, was it the Duchess of Kent who was given? I can't remember who the dignitary was, but anyway, she gave the medals out, and you trudged down the steps and you're walking round, and just got mine out and had a look at it, and someone, this is a winner's medal. Then all the lads were going, yeah, I've got one as well. And in the end, we were like, well, we've all got winners' medals, so we're walking round, and obviously very disappointed. That we'd lost. And as soon as we got round to the tunnel, there was someone waiting for us. Obviously, someone had been given a right rollicking, and we had to give the medal straight back. So, but I did have an FA Cup winners' medal for a short period of time.
I mean, it was a disappointing day. I was in tears. I was consoled by a Scouser who said, "Oh, you'll be back. You'll be back here again soon."
Oh no, it's not been a happy place. Apart from 73. But
you stayed at Sunderland over the summer, and you played 8 more times before you moved on to Millwall. And the season after, we went on to narrowly avoid relegation that year, and Millwall finished just outside the playoffs. So what was behind your move back down south at that time?
I don't really want to dwell on it too much, Rich. But I mean, family weren't particularly settled. My form wasn't particularly great. I was struggling with a few injuries and stuff like that, and it all sort of seems to, be going after such a great run before, seemed to be going wrong. In the end, Mick McCarthy came in for us from Millwall, and obviously I knew Mick from my Ireland days, and I ended up, signing for Millwall, which was sad. I think I look back and I think really sad about it. I think, if everything had been all right, we families had settled and stuff like that, could have got back to the form we had, and built up a good partnership with Don up front, but it wasn't to be. And I went to Millwall, and to be honest with you, things I didn't have a great time there. I didn't play, wasn't playing particularly well. Started suffering with lots of injuries, and it wasn't a good move. It was a disappointing end for me, Sunderland. I was, and it was down to me, no one else. As I say, no one else involved. I say form was poor, injuries.
But you were back with Denis Smith years later at Oxford, and a couple of the other lads as well. Was Anton was down there as well, was he?
Yeah, Rogie was there. Yeah, Manson was there. Crosser was there. Roger Jones was there. So it was like a sort of mini. Rushy came down, David Rush, and signed for us. I think Martin Gray came for a short period of time as well. Yeah. So there was like a mini sort of Sunderland revival at Oxford, and that was good. I mean, it was good to be playing with Denis again and Crosser. And all the boys, and they had a decent side at Oxford United. I think eventually they got promoted. Yeah, so we had a little mini Sunderland revival then. It was great, as I say, great to be with all those boys again. It was good.
So after your football career came to an end at Brighton, where you are now, you said that you're now a podiatrist for the NHS. How did you get into that?
Well, I think when I finished my career, I thought, what am I going to do next? You automatically think, I'll get a job in football and, do some coaching and stuff like that. And it never works out. So I decided what I'm going to do. I wanted to be a physiotherapist. So I did an access course at a college, and then I tried to get a place at university doing physiotherapy, but it was difficult to get in those days. And then I spoke to the PFA, who pointed me in the way of Norman Whiteside, who was a podiatrist. Now, I don't know if you know what a podiatrist is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they deal with, all things foot and ankle related or lower limb. So I went to uni for 3 years in Brighton, qualified in 2000, and I got a job in the NHS in 2000. I've been there now 20 years, which is quite remarkable, because I've probably been doing this as long as I was playing football, and I love it. I've got to be honest with you. I was glad I had that little chat with Norman that day, because he was the one who pointed me in that direction. Just one footnote, I've got a 10-year-old boy, and in the lockdown we've been watching Sunderland Till I Die, and there's one positive outcome. I love the series. I mean, it's a hard watch when the club as such, in terms of where they are at the moment, and but the one thing that came out of it is positive. He wants a Sunderland kit for his birthday.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so he's I think he's turning against Manchester United, and possibly going down the road of Sunderland, which isn't a bad thing.
Not at all. The more fans we've got, the more exiles we've got, because I live away from the northeast. I'm over in northwest Wales, bringing up a 10-year-old as a Sunderland fan amongst Man United and Liverpool and Everton and City fans, and he's the one with his red and white shirt on during PE and stuff like that, and it's not easy. So but it's rewarding. So I hope you can comfort him in that direction.
Hi. Kieran Brady here. I just wanted to extend my gratitude and my respect to all at the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's an incredible act of voluntary work and generosity from the people of Sunderland to help those who are most in need, particularly at this time of year. I could go on a significant rant about the fact that such benevolence should always coexist with anger that such establishments have to exist in one of the world's wealthiest countries, but I will do my best to refrain and would encourage everyone around the city to do what you can to aid and assist those who are afflicted with such economic hardship. My respect to all, and I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a peaceful and prosperous 2021. Thank you.